Hello and welcome to Zestology, the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. The weather's not very zesty. I'm struggling to feel it a little bit at the moment. It is pouring with rain here in London. It's one of those classic London early kind of January, February days. It's pouring with rain. I'm being a bit of a wuss. I've got an umbrella up, but not saying sorry for that. And it's quite windy as well. And I've got a £3 umbrella that is just threatening to fly away. But I'm in very good spirits because I'm feeling fairly energised because this being a podcast all about energy, I've just spoken to a man who is eminently qualified to talk about that. It is Dr. Roger Henderson, who is a doctor, author, columnist as well. And, you've probably seen him on all sorts of TV shows. He wrote health columns for the Sunday Times for years. He's written in The Spectator. He's been on Sky. He's presented a number of fairly high-profile TV series as well, or being the medical expert on them as well. And we had a wide-ranging chat. You'll hear us talking a little bit about Brexit, a little bit about all sorts of diet and health-related activities, diabetes, but also wanted to talk about blue zones, about living longer. And he wrote a book about living to 100 ways of living to 100. So I wanted to ask him about some of them. There's not 100 different methods for living to 100 in this podcast. Oh no, I think my umbrella's about to fall away. It is literally about to fly away. That's what you get if you buy it. Oh no, it's inside out now. I'm that person you laugh at when you see them struggling with a cheap umbrella right now. You can probably hear it. It is a horrible day. Alright, listen, enough of this. How do we live to 100 and other topics with Dr. Roger Henderson? Here he is.
Roger, how are you doing?
I'm very well indeed. It's good to be here. Thanks ever so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to chatting to you. I've been looking at your Twitter feed. There's quite a lot of Brexit-related stuff on there. We're going to try not to go down that rabbit hole, aren't we?
I have this commitment every day I wake up. I think I'm just going to use Twitter for sensible, professional stuff, and I end up tweeting pictures of cute kittens and Brexit rants. I've really got to try and rein it back in a bit.
There is a syndrome that I've noticed amongst my friends, and I know one of your big things is that sometimes just living a kind of calmer, slightly quieter, less stimulated life can be a really good thing. Yeah. I have noticed that people get really uptight about Brexit, and I've noticed it in me as well. It's becoming something that's kind of impinging on our national consciousness, isn't it?
We're an angry nation. We undoubtedly, when you sort of look at the news around Westminster, a year ago there wasn't the amount of spleen being vented. Now I know part of that's because the deadline's coming up, but I do feel that people are generally grumpier. It's not just me, and a lot of people have said this. They're just either fed up or they want their 10 penneth. And if someone else gives a 10 penneth back, they shout louder. There's a lot more shouting going on. I see an enormous amount of heat and no light at the moment that's going on. So the sooner we can sort of get all calmed down a bit, the better. I can't see any sort of end to it yet. I mean, at the time I started this sentence, the government today is still in power. But, we're moving so fast. And I was saying to my 21-year-old last night, I said, make a note of this. You might think it's boring, but in 50 years' time, in 100 years' time, historians will still be writing and talking about it. This is epic.
Yeah.
But angry.
And it is. And I just wonder if there's something bigger going on globally, which is, we live faster and faster lives. And I think I actually read an article that you wrote about this. And I wonder if life is lived at such a frenetic pace that we never have any downtime anymore. Yeah. I just went on holiday last week and had the whole day when I didn't switch on the internet. And I then switched on the Saturday morning, and it was just a deluge of messages and WhatsApps and everything else. And I think our brains just don't have the chance to chill out anymore. So maybe that's part of it as well.
I think that's absolutely right. I'm not sure if there's good scientific studies showing this, but my view here is that social media is on the whole fairly toxic. Now that's a fairly controversial thing to say, but the internet, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I mean, if I was writing a feature 30 years ago, an editor would ring up and say, Rog, can you write about lettuce and rhubarb disease? I'd have to go to a library or find a book, and literally unearth it. These days they can ask you for anything and I'll automatically go, yep, that's fine, because I know it's out there at the click of a button. The problem with that is that everybody in the world now has instant access to everything, and everybody has a voice. And certainly in areas like eating disorders in younger people, and I've got a bit of a vested interest in this, is I think that is tremendously toxic, because the one thing that a lot of social media does, especially things like Instagram, is promote everybody having a great time. And a lot of people who I know are not having a great time are putting up the front saying, I'm having a great time, because they're caught up in the wave and the competition of they've got to be like that, because that's how everybody else is. So you're absolutely right. There's no space now for either insecurity. There's very little space for being your own boss and admitting, putting your hands up and saying, actually, I'm not having a great time. And also, one of the things I've said to my kids is just switch off, learn to detox. Okay, most of the friends or the contacts you've got out in the internet world are nothing of the kind. You know, I can count the number of people I would call friends on the fingers of one finger. You know, and I think that's fine. I've got thousands of acquaintances.
Yeah.
But in terms of friends who I'd ring up at 2, 3 in the morning, very, very few. Okay. I don't want lots of Instagram friends or or Twitter followers or whatever. I just need real people. But it's very hard. You get sucked into thinking that it's important, and it actually isn't. And I wrote a book years ago called Stress Beaters, and someone said to me after that, what's the one tip that you would say to people to try and de-stress or reduce our levels of stress? And I've thought about it a lot, and I've thought about it since, and the first answer I gave then is probably still the one I'd give now, which is develop a sense of perspective, because the vast majority of our problems, which we're quite lucky to have, are first world problems. So if our Wi-Fi goes down at home, we kick the dog. You know, if we run out of the latest coffee in the latest coffee shop we're going to, we get cross, we chunter. And you have to sort of strip it right back and you say, okay, am I healthy? Yes, I am. Boy, am I lucky. Have I got a roof over my head? Yes. Have I got clean water? Yes. Have I got food in my tongue? Yes. Have I got enough to get from A to B? Yes. And I think you've got to really scale it back to those levels and say, that's fine, that's enough. The rest is froth. Okay, you don't actually need, and companies rely on this, you don't actually need the next Apple 11, 11A, 11, 12, what's coming next. You just don't, but we think we do.
But it's so hard, isn't it?
It's extremely hard.
This technology is addictive, and if you're using Facebook on your phone, you've got 600 developers the other side trying to make it as addictive as possible.
Yeah, and I think there is some good evidence coming through now that there is a definite tendency for some people to genuinely become digitally addicted. And when you talk to people who spend all the time on smartphones, they go off on holiday, the first 2-3 days, if they're really trying to detox, are very, very hard. It's like them giving up coffee. Yeah. My wife will give me a slap around the face because I tend to creep a little bit to look at it. Is an email coming in? And it's not because I need to, but it's because am I missing something, the next big thing? And surprise, surprise, the world is going to keep spinning. I heard the other day that Richard Branson, it's maybe true or not, so I hope it is true, is that he spends the first hour or two of the day doing his emails and then switches off. That's it. That's his time for emails. And I think that's tremendously refreshing. And unless you're going to miss something huge at the end of the day, which most of us don't, that's a really good idea, just to park that and compartmentalise when you do your digital work. Now the problem with our working days is that 9 to 5 or whenever it is, we have to be always on because everything is coming by email, everything is coming down sort of online. But more than anything, I would start off by saying, if you want to detox, strip your email contacts. Actually look at how many of your emails are actually genuinely needed. And I'm not talking about emails coming in from Nigeria, saying you've won 15 million quid. I'm talking about emails that are just copied in by people who just copy people in their contacts because they think that's what they should be doing. And it also gives them a little bit of kudos. Look how busy and important I am. Strip those out. You don't need to be in that loop.
What about on the technology perspective? I read something you wrote about the perils of consulting Dr. Google. And I know that is something that I have tended to do in the past. It's really hard not to. And I know how unhelpful it is for me. In your work as a doctor, what are the kind of negative effects that you've found of people who do? Because it can be very helpful.
It can be very helpful. And I have had patients who've come in and looked at Dr. Google and said, I've got this set of symptoms. I think I've got X, Y, and Z, including malignancies. And they've been right. And you think that's great. And awareness campaigns are fantastic. The problem with people using Dr. Google is that there is no filter on it. So if you type in headache, Dr. Google will somewhere on that list spit out brain tumour.
Yeah.
And since the rise of the internet has happened, as a nation and across the world, we are better informed. Of course we are. We've got the internet. We are not better educated. And that's the problem. Okay, so if I wasn't a medical man and I sort of typed in nosebleed, and I looked at the differential diagnosis that got spewed out, I would be down my doctors, in a second, because brain tumour, serious bleeding disorders would be on there. Okay,
but if you did get a nosebleed, or if you got it's hard, isn't it? Because you're a doctor, so you know what it means. But
well, exactly, and you mustn't ever forget, that people can be very frightened by their symptoms, and you must never sort of do down their fears. You must never denigrate them, but it's all about getting that filter, because if you've got dreadful aches and pains, if you're running a high temperature, if you feel like death warmed up, the chances are you don't have an active leukemia. You've got a viral infection or flu. And as my patients always got sick of me saying, common things are common. Okay? And the problem with the internet is it lumps the really rare in with the really common, and then doesn't say, but on balance, that's what you might have. Okay? It says, well, this is what you might have, and if you're worried, go and see your doctor. So whereas 30 years ago, someone would come in with something written on the back of a fag packet. Okay, I might have these symptoms. People will come in with 10 pages of A4 they've printed off, and it doesn't rather make your heart sink.
I bet it does.
And especially in all sorts of weird and wonderful areas, food intolerances and allergies, and some of what I'd call more of the fringe areas of medicine, alternative medicines, things like that. Because the internet is global, you will get someone saying, well, I've got this paper from America, and you look at it and it is as kooky as they come.
Right.
But because it's on the internet, it must be okay. I mean, you mustn't forget that if you want a proof of an argument that you have, if you want your view on life or on the world validating, you will find that. There will be stuff out there that says, yeah, Roger, you're right. The earth is flat. Absolutely, of course it is. The earth is flat, we've got members all around the globe. So there's a problem. So you can make anything fit in the internet age. And I still believe there's no substitute for almost stripping back and going back to old-fashioned medicine, where you have history, you have examination, you have diagnosis. And yes, the internet can be a help for that. The problem with that is the pressure on the NHS. And we have an NHS system designed in 1948, which is still fundamentally has the 1948 structure, trying to work in 2019. But that ain't going to work.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we have a always-on 24-hour society who, really, if they're honest, will probably only get to see their GP between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. If they're lucky. So there is this discord there. So people are going to go online and they're going to look and say, well, I'll try and research myself. But at the end of the day, it still often feeds back into the old-fashioned NHS, if I can put it like that. Now, there's this great digital drive at the moment. The current health secretary is very, very up for digitally driving.
Yes, I've seen your tweets about it.
Yeah, which is fine, and I commend him for that. But in a way, you're putting a new coat of paint on a car whose engine's a bit knackered. All right, you've got to sort of go to basics and fix the basic stuff. Get enough doctors first of all.
Well,
get enough nurses.
Got the money for it, have they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you look at countries who've got the highest index of happiness in general, and not just health, but if you look at the country that's got the highest index of happiness, what they view as the best health and the best healthcare systems, it's the Scandinavian countries. Yeah. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're quite small populations, and it's also because they don't mind getting spanked for tax at 60%. They put up with that. They say, we'll put up with that because we have got genuine cradle-to-grave provisions of services. Now, in this country, there's a great resistance to raise tax. We'd like it all on the cheap. And I was at a conference in Scotland years ago on a panel, and someone said, you've got 30 seconds to say what would you do to fix the NHS if you're in the cabinet. And I said, I'd do one thing, and I'd be fired from the cabinet within 10 seconds, because what I would do is I would put 2 pence on income tax. But it would not just be 2 pence on income tax and that's it. It would be called an NHS tax. And psychologically, I'm convinced that if you were to put a penny or 2 pence on tax and literally say that is NHS, that is ring-marked for NHS taxes, okay? It's earmarked, it's ring-fenced for that. That's what it's going to be used for. Most people, because we all use NHS, most people would say, okay, I'll go along with that, okay? And politicians of all flavours, I mean, I've seen 13 or 14 health secretaries come and go. I mean, count them, and none of them worth a footnote on the pages of political history. They all like to tinker. That is their raison d'etre.
It's human nature.
It is human nature. Got to make my mark, make my stamp.
Ego and human nature.
All this in there. But so many of them fundamentally end up putting another layer of management or another great plan or another next leap forward. And I've lost count of the number of NHS plans that are coming through, rather than saying, okay, let's go right back to basics. Okay, what do people on the street want? Well, okay, put a matron on every ward. It sounds a daft thing to say, but when you talk to people who've been in hospital, they say, I wish matron was there, have somebody in charge. Okay, open up cottage hospitals. Okay, why do you have to go to your local hospital, main hospital, if you're not sick enough to go there, but need a halfway house? We used to have a wonderful cottage hospital system. They'll come back, they're still there, but open up the cottage hospital system. Make sure you get sufficient, primary care staff, because 90% of all healthcare in this country is provided by primary care, with 8% of the budget. I mean, think of those figures.
Yeah.
Okay, 90%, 8% of the budget. We are doing our level best, okay, on Mickey Mouse money. And that demand is only going to get worse and worse. And as our lifestyles change, and unfortunately our lifestyles generally are going the wrong way rather than the right way, there is the potential for the first time ever for my children to be the first generation where they may live less long than me.
Well, that's going down at the moment. It's plateaued, hasn't it?
It's plateaued. So it's a little bit unsure at the moment. But that is really telling. It's really telling. I mean, I would never ever have seen type 2 diabetics in teenagers. They'd have been type 1 diabetics. Nothing they could have done about it. I am now seeing and around the country, we're now seeing type 2 diabetics in teenagers. Now that is absolutely frightening. And the reason that they're type 2 diabetic is that they are the size of a house. If you've got an 18-year-old who is 25 stone, there's a damn good reason for that. Okay? And they are usually accompanied by their 25 stone parents. Usually. Okay, you very rarely get healthy, thin, normal weight parents with a morbidly obese child. Okay, so like often breeds like, but the rise in weight in this country, really, if I had one wish, I suppose today, is I would snap my fingers and get everyone in this country back to a normal weight, because weight and the rise in obesity and super obesity is steadily going to sink us because of the consequences that that is going to have. Because if you walk down the high street and just look at who's overweight, you could probably say at least 50% of most streets you walk down is overweight. Okay. The problem with that is it starts to normalise it. Because if you're carrying a few pounds and a bit chubby and you think, you look round and say, I look pretty normal.
Well, what else is normalised? You go in the supermarket and 95% of it is, full of sugar, isn't it?
It is.
So again, you think, well, some of it must be all right, because it's all got loads of sugar in it.
Yeah, and there's a huge, almost like a war in the medical world at the moment as to what's the real enemy for things like heart disease. Is it sugar? Is it fat? And the jury's out a little bit, but sugar's starting to push towards the front of that. And because patients will often say, what's the best diet, Dr. H? Give me the diet that works. Well, there isn't a perfect diet. If there was, I'd have written a book about it and be sitting in the Cayman Islands as a multimillionaire. Okay,
but still paying your taxes.
But still paying my taxes, of course. But I think the principles of diet have been slightly lost, and the principle, because people think if you starve yourself or eat less, then it's good for you. Actually, nothing could be further from the truth. You need to eat on a regular basis. And I often say, breakfast like a king, lunch like a lord, supper like a pauper. The problem, and that's how our bodies are designed to run. Okay, so we load up early in the day and then get less and less and less. The problem is, for most of us, it's the other way around. We snatch a breakfast, and if you're a smoker, that's your black coffee and a fag, okay? You have a sandwich at lunchtime, and you get home, okay, and you have a big-sized meal of whatever you want, often processed foods, washed down with a bottle of wine, because you've earned it.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the wrong way around. And we often will graze in between. So if you're going to do anything dietary-wise, have your 3 square meals, okay? But you do not snack or eat between those. That's the first thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you have that clear blue water. Because when you ask people to keep a food diary, they're often amazed by, if they're honest, I had a biscuit there and a bit of toast there, and they're constantly grazing. So
I tend to have 2 meals a day.
Often in a grazing. That's
I feel
fine.
that suits me rather well, actually.
That's fine, and the reason why the 5-2 diet often works for many people is nothing to do with the diet as such, it's just calorie restriction on 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Okay, and because the fundamental thing, you get the very rare person who's got a metabolic problem, or you get the very rare person who's got a genuine genetic obesity trait. We're starting to realise that there is a degree of genetics in this, but for the vast majority of people who are overweight, there is only one reason for that, and that is the calories going in are more than the calories going out. Okay, and there are no calories in fresh air, and I remember a patient coming to see me, and she was seriously overweight, and I knew she ate too much because I would see her in the line for the fish and chip shop, and she said, "Dr. H, I eat like a bird." And I must have been having a bad day, because straight away I said back, "Yes, Edna," that wasn't her name, by the way. "Yes, Edna, the trouble is that bird's a hummingbird, which has to eat every 10 minutes and twice its body weight every day."
Doesn't sound like you.
And then I thought, I was having a bad day, and then I thought, oh my goodness, what have I said? And waited for the lawyer's letters to roll in.
Yeah.
And luckily it went straight over her head.
Right.
I thought it was rather a nice line. But a lot of people do genuinely think they're not eating much. And when you actually get them to be honest, they get really shocked by what's coming through. So eat sensibly, 3 meals a day, never snack. Make sure you stay very well hydrated, because that's something else, because most of us are dehydrated, and one of the first symptoms of dehydration is not thirst, it's hunger. So when we want to eat, we don't, we want a drink of water. And try not to eat after a certain time or late at night.
And you wrote a book on longevity, didn't you?
I did, sort of how to live to 100.
Yes.
And I often said to people,
ways to live to 100.
I often said to people, if you buy 2, you live to 200.
Did people, when you brought that book out, sometimes people will say to me, "Well, you do a podcast on zestology, but you've got a cold this week. Where's that? What's happened there?" Puts the pressure on, doesn't it? Once you've written a book about living to 100.
Absolutely. And it was. It I suppose could do with being slightly updated, but it was very short points about how to give yourself the best chance. 2,000 years ago, the father of modern medicine, a chap called Galen, said that the doctor is only nature's assistant. And he was right then, and it's right now. Okay.
Yeah, totally agree.
By which I mean that, yes, and you can argue whether our lifestyle is preordained, or believe as Donald Trump believes that we've only got so many days on this earth. Perhaps too many in certain cases, but
he seems to survive on the diet of big Macs.
That's right. It'll catch up with him. But undoubtedly, just look at if you're a smoker, for example, undoubtedly our lifestyles heavily influence not only how long we live, but the quality of our lives. There may be genetics, and if both parents live to be 105. You've probably got a better chance of living a long life than if both parents live to 55. You can't do anything about that. But healthiness is fundamentally down to lifestyle and the choices we make in our lives. And I suppose that book was looking at, how you do that. Look at the place in the world which has got the biggest concentration of people 100 and over is Okinawa. just off Japan.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the blue zones.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Now look at why that is. Why, and interestingly, if they then emigrate to America, their longevity falls.
Really?
Now, why should that be? Why should they live long and healthy lives there? Well, when you look at it, and I researched this in some detail, it's really very, very simple. Very few are overweight.
Yeah.
They carry normal weight. They have very, very little processed sugar and very little salt. They have a diet that is high in lean meat, packed with fruit and vegetables, and a lot of oily fish.
Mm.
They have a strong social support group.
Yeah.
They have lots of friends and family. Okay, they exercise on a regular basis, but they're not down the gym.
Yeah.
They're actually doing things like meditation. They're doing walking, low-level swimming. Okay, they're just keeping mind and body going. Okay, they've got a strong belief system, strong faith system. Nothing by itself which would stand out, but put it all together, and the body goes, oh yes, please, I'll have some more of that.
When you talk about biohacking, none of those are very glamorous, are they? But those are the things that work.
And there is nothing glamorous about being healthy. You know, people are always looking for the next big thing.
Yeah.
You know, what's the next big spin class we want to go to? The next big, form of yoga we want to get into? It actually doesn't matter. The best exercise probably is walking.
Yeah. And that's actually, I read some research with the blue zones recently, and they reckon that the one significant factor, possibly more than any other, is the fact that people in these blue zones do a lot of low-level exercise all the way through the day.
Yep.
And look at us here, sitting in a room with no windows.
Absolutely.
But they're all out there walking around. We need to record this on the go, don't we?
Completely. I mean, get a dog. I mean, every day, just because I have to go out and walk the three beasts, I'm walking between 6 and 10k without blinking.
Lovely. Your life in the country sounds
it's
idyllic.
it's very nice. When it's throwing it down with rain.
Is it a blue zone?
It's blue because you're cold. But you don't think about it. You don't think you're exercising. I'm not going to having to drive to a gym. And the evidence really is that is as effective as going for lower level jogging. You really don't have to run marathons. If you want to, that's great. If you've got bad joints, swimming, fantastic. Because it takes the load off your joints. But you don't have to do anything heavy duty. It's all part of the package. Okay. Now technology can be very good at helping that. So you can have your how many steps have I done today?
Yeah.
It's great. A lot of people do like that.
I've got this on it's the Oura ring, which measures all sorts.
Right.
I don't know if you'd approve of it or not. Actually, it gives me heart rate variability.
Fine. If they're accurate, if they're accurate, that's fine. I'm not sure.
Well, that is the question.
I'm not sure
accurate?
or how much your life would alter if you didn't know those stats.
Yeah.
If you didn't know today's temperature, would it really affect what you did tomorrow? Probably not.
Yeah.
But it is quite nice to know. You're doing your 6,000 to 10,000 steps, but you should be doing them anyway. And I think using technology as an aid once someone has got it, once someone realises technology is not going to improve their health. It's simply a tool in the toolbox to help them with the choices they have made.
Yeah.
And you've got to get people locked into making those choices. Okay. I often say to patients, and I'm always amazed by the response, okay, who's responsible for your health? Is it you or is it me? Oh, it's you, doctor. I mean, that is remarkable. It is nothing to do with me.
No.
I am not responsible for their health one jot. Okay. I'm going to signpost them. I'm going to diagnose them. I'm going to treat them if need be. But fundamentally, am I going to be there watching every bit of food that goes in?
Yeah.
Watching how much exercise they do, how much sleep they get, how much booze they drink, what their weight is, okay, what their relationships are like?
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with me.
Well, this is why I've been interested in talking to you, because one of the things about this podcast is I try and look at what I might call the new rules of health.
Yeah.
And there's from a skeptical background, we get some pretty wild and wacky suggestions out there. Some of them work, some of them don't, and some of them work for some people. A lot of them work for some people. And I'm interested in talking to you. You have a much more conventional medical background about some of the ideas that kind of pop up on a regular basis. Like, for example, one of the things which just comes up so often is meditation. What do you think about that?
Good evidence that it works. A lot of people who try it will find it very hard to be able to switch off. I've never tried it because I've never felt the need to try it because
perhaps walking the dogs is your meditation.
Exactly. We find our meditation in different ways. If it's a case where you have to find just some quiet time, then you can just go and do that by deep breathing for 5 minutes, in the kitchen when nobody's there.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to have a class and actually really go through it deeply, yes, do that. There is good evidence it will lower pulse rate, it will lower blood pressure. Okay. So will stroking the dog.
Yeah.
I've got nothing against meditation at all as an aid to reducing stress. But if the minute you then turn off your meditation, you're back into that stressful, toxic environment and nothing has changed, you'd be better off trying to change the toxicity of the environment or altering the big picture rather than having to go for a sticking plaster from time to time with meditation. But if someone does it, if everyone enjoys it and it's good for them, I'm absolutely fine with meditation, but it's just a tool, it's not the answer.
What about functional health strategies? Working with perhaps, if I want an appointment with my GP, I'll get one for 10 minutes a week next Tuesday.
Yeah.
But if you're working with an expert on your own or in some way on kind of holistic solutions to improve your health, that might be supplements, it might be lifestyle practices like meditation. What about that, and how can that work alongside conventional medicine?
I think a doctor who is open to alternatives but blind to science is doing himself a disservice. I think you have to be open to both.
Yeah.
I've gone on record, for me, the biggest bunkum of all, and the thing that I will shoot down in flames every time, is homeopathy. People will swear blue in the face it works for them, and it will work for them. Okay, it doesn't mean it works. Okay, it means that they think it works. Okay, now I can hear the howls of protest from people listening to this. If it works for you, fine. It's not going to do you any harm, and if it works for you, I'm very happy for you. It's great, but please don't pretend it's medicine. Please don't pretend it's science. It's a glass of water.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think medicine is the patriarchal view of medicine, and perhaps even the one that I was trained up in 30, 35 years ago, is that the doctor is right, it's top down, big doctor telling you what to do, that's what goes on, do this, take that, all will be well in the world. You have to invert that pyramid. Okay, and who's responsible for the health? It's the patient that starts first. Okay, the patient says, this is what is wrong with me, this is my lifestyle, this is what I would like to happen. Then you have to work through that. Some of the things that they would like to happen, I can help them with. Some of the things that they would like to happen are completely out of my hand.
Yeah.
And you have to sort of then, each individual say, that's what I can help you with, that's what you have to help yourself with. Okay, and by doing that, you get the big picture. But holistically, if someone, I often say, if you want to stand in a bucket of rhubarb juice and it does no harm and it helps you feel better, fine, absolutely fine. And again, the internet is a bit of a culprit here. You then get the blurring of the edges where everybody starts to develop a food allergy, or everybody thinks that something that in their lifestyle is toxic to them. Okay, when actually there's probably not much evidence of that. So it was Swift, the great satirist, that said the three best doctors are Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Merriman. Okay, and that's still valid. And I keep boringly going back to the same point. It's the simple non-medical things that will actually, in the long run, usually give you better quality of life than people like me giving you stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's no question. Yes, you've got high blood pressure,
and that is taking responsibility.
And it is. Now, you've got to say straight off. Fine. What about the guys who develop type 2 diabetes who've been stick thin all their lives? What about the guys who get lung cancer and never smoked a fag? What about the guys who have a stroke and they've been Olympic athletes? Yes, you're always going to get that. Okay, and you can't legislate for that. That is always going to happen. In the same way you're always going to get Uncle Albert, who smokes 100 Capstan full strength since the age of 8, washed down with a bottle of whiskey, and lives to 110.
Yeah.
But Uncle Albert's a freak of nature.
Yeah.
Okay. The trouble is, Uncle Albert gets wheeled out as an example of why everybody else can smoke 100 Capstan full strength. They ignore the fact that there's one Uncle Albert, and there's 99,999 people that will die 20 years early. Compared to him. So you've got to be a bit careful about the the atypical extremes, but for 80+% of the general population with health problems, a great many of those will have some degree, not all, but some degree based in lifestyle or past lifestyle. Okay, and you can put that right. Okay, and one of the problems, for example, with diabetes, it's an area I'm heavily involved with. 80% of people with type 2 diabetes are overweight or obese. Okay, I see relatively few thin or slim people with type 2 diabetes. You can get them, but they're relatively uncommon.
Yeah.
And the NHS spends billions a year trying to treat diabetes, but 80% of that cost is not drugs, it's not seeing people like me, it's treating the complications that have arisen over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So by the time you're treating complications, boy, that horse has long gone and bolted. Okay, you're doing it too late. So one of the drives at the moment, and one of the reasons I'm involved with the company I'm involved with, is to get in early, identify people who are just tiptoeing their toe into the early stages of type 2 diabetes. And rather than saying, as we've often said, oh, do your best, come back in a year, see how you're getting on, okay? Or, alternatively, let's give you tablets straight away, saying, actually, this is going the wrong way, let's turn this back now. Okay,
it goes back to the longevity stuff.
It goes back to the longevity stuff. And you will hear people say, my diabetes has been cured by going on a low-sugar diet or by losing 10 stone in weight. What that means is that diabetes has gone back into the normal range. They're not showing any diabetic readings.
Yeah.
But I would never use the word cure in that case. They've gone into remission. Because if those people then put their 4 or 5 stone back on, bang, their diabetes will come back as sure as I'm talking to you, because it's weight related. Okay? But that shows the impact that you can actually turn around a potentially fatal condition, because diabetes kills lots and lots of people, believe me. You can turn that around just by the simple basis of losing weight.
And we've not got too long left, but one of the other interesting things about longevity that comes up again and again is the importance of sleep.
Oh.
And I know you've written a couple of books on parenting, haven't you?
Yeah.
Which I was particularly interested in because I'm becoming a parent very soon for the first
Congratulations.
time. Thank you. Yeah, and I think the one thing that is slightly hanging over me. I'm really looking forward to everything, but I do like my sleep a lot. So how does that tie in with longevity and not getting very much of it when you have kids?
High quality sleep is fundamental to long-term good health. We know very little about sleep. It's a fascinating area. If I had my time again, I might become a sleep consultant.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating.
Have you read Matthew Walker's book on sleep?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
good.
the reason why sleep deprivation is such a fantastic torture around the world, if you keep someone awake for 120, 140, 160 hours, sooner or later that person will die. Why should that happen? The body will just say that's enough and shut from lack of sleep. If you're a parent, I had 3 children under the age of 5 at one point, and none of them slept. I'm going to depress you here now. And so it was about 7 years where we didn't have an unbroken night's sleep. Okay, and that was when I was doing out of hours on call, all sorts of things. And my wife and I reckoned it took about between 9 and 12 months to get that sleep debt back. Okay. But you'll cope, you'll be absolutely fine, you'll be walking around in the fog, you'll be permanently knackered, okay, just prepare yourself. But you'll come through it and it'll go by really fast. And long term, your sleep pattern should not change again too much. You should get back into rhythm with time. Okay, you'll probably find when you do sleep, you're absolutely exhausted. You'll find you fall
deeper.
You'll fall asleep reading bedtime stories. And the kids will be waking you up saying, "Dad, wake up." That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
But long term, you should be okay. But a good quality sleep, we need sort of between 6 and 8 hours. It's a bit of a myth about you've got to have 8 hours sleep. That is a bit of a myth.
Yeah.
But 6 to 8 hours of decent sleep is really what we need. And again, there's all sorts of reasons why you don't get that. We have coffee, and tea too late. We go on our screens too late. We know blue light. The light that's emitted from our screens is stimulating. It's bad for us. And that's why a couple of weeks ago the government came out and said with children, shut down screens an hour and a half before they go to bed.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why. Okay, we eat too late. We exercise too late. Exercise is great, but if you're exercising at 9, 10 at night, your body's still going to be powered up at 12, 1 in the morning. Okay, we don't get enough exercise in the day, so we're not tired enough in the evenings. Okay, so there are ways. We have bedrooms that are too hot or too cold. We have televisions in our bedrooms, so we should be using the bedrooms just for sleeping rather than just for doing other things in. So all these things contribute to poor sleep, but sleep fundamentally is one of the bedrocks of long-term good health, along with good quality nutrition, along with enough hydration, which we often forget about, along with healthy functioning relationships, family, friends, along with sensible alcohol levels, along with no smoking. That's the big no-no from my point of view.
Yeah.
Do not smoke. And along with regular moderate exercise and weight reduction. Now, if you can do that, you're heading off to Okinawa essentially, and getting
You're in
there.
the blue zone.
Exactly. Now, none of that needs an app.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you do have conditions, like type 2 diabetes and the Lever Healthcare app system, which I'm involved with, then that is a very useful tool, and we've got the studies that show it works. It will reverse people's type 2 diabetes as an aid to helping people get to where they should be. And they wouldn't have got there without that.
Yeah.
That's the thing, okay? It's just a tool, but it's a tool that never used to be available.
Yeah.
Okay, so it works for some people, doesn't work for others. Some people don't like using apps or technology, older generation things. But increasingly, most of us have got a smartphone, and if you can use that as your consulting doctor to help as part of the reduction in your type 2 diabetes levels, then that's got to be a way forward.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes, haven't we? Is that okay? Yeah. Something I've asked everyone on this podcast is, what is one book that you would recommend? Obviously, you've written quite a few, but what is one book that's had a big impact on you that you think other people would enjoy? And what is one tip, with all your medical expertise, for living with more energy and vitality?
Very good question.
I mean, you've given us that it might well be sleep, for example, but so one book and one tip.
My tip, I would come back to perspective. My tip would be, know what you've got. Okay, because if you know what you've got, you shouldn't want more. Most of the time, okay, and most of our problems are first world problems. So get a sense of perspective. Okay,
Hard with Instagram, isn't it?
It really is. I think it was Mark Twain who said, "I've had thousands and thousands of serious problems in my life, all of which didn't exist." We manufacture most of our problems in our head. We've all been there at 3 a.m. Oh, today's going to be awful. What if? Okay, and they just don't happen. So deal with what you've got, not what if. But get a sense of perspective, and if at all possible, have a supportive partner. Okay. The book I would recommend is probably John Diamond's "See Because Cowards Get Cancer Too." Now, John was a Sunday Times journalist, phenomenal journalist. And he developed, he had a fairly unhealthy lifestyle, and he developed cancer of the throat. And he wrote this fantastic book about the journey through cancer, which eventually got him.
Yeah. Who was he married to?
He was married to Nigella. Was it Nigella?
Yes, I think it was, yeah.
Yes, it was Nigella.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And he got obviously depressed, and he was hit with all the treatments of the late 90s. But it's now become a bit of a textbook for medical students as to what to do with someone presenting with terminal illness and what not to do with them. And I spoke with John when he was ill, because I was writing for the Sunday Times then, and he was writing for the Sunday Times, and I said, well, what about a piece where, from two viewpoints, where you got the view as a doctor, as a patient with cancer writing for the Times, and I'm the doctor for the Sunday Times. And he had a think, and he sent me a lovely letter, and he said, I've had a really good long think about it, but I don't think it's a goer. Unless I limit my cancer journalism, I'm going to spend all my time writing about cancer, which interestingly he almost ended up doing, for however long that is. Unfortunately, it wasn't for very long. But so John Diamond, "See Because Cowards Get Cancer Too."
That sounds really good, actually.
I mean, there are so many good books out there. Another one is Christopher Hitchens' "Mortality." That's a phenomenal book. I mean, I wish Christopher Hitchens was alive today. Phenomenal writer, phenomenal intellect, and it was his battle with esophageal cancer, which he lost.
Great to talk to you.
And to you,
Roger,
it's been
so much.
fun. We could do another hour without blinking, couldn't we?
I know. Well, we'll do another one. Perhaps after Brexit. Actually, that might take ages. Let's not limit ourselves to that, but we'll work it out.
And I often say to people, my Twitter name, sort of, it was suggested to me, sort of Roger the Doctor. So
Yeah.
I just, and I didn't realise, you know, I always say to people that is just my Twitter name rather than a formal instruction.
So people can find you on Twitter.
Yeah,
at Roger the Doctor.
That's Roger the Doctor.
And that is a formal instruction.
It's a formal
That's
instruction.
excellent.
That's it. Thank you, Dr. Roger. Roger the Doctor, if you want to follow him on Twitter. And plenty more coming from Zestology next time. In the meantime, if you'd like to find a few more books, a bit more inspiration, then you can head to Facebook, Zestology Books. And of course, sign up for my weekly newsletter with some zesty stuff in there. We've been talking quite a bit about this Netflix TV show with Marie Kondo. I talked about the Marie Kondo book on Zestology. She's now got a Netflix series out. And ever since I mentioned it on my newsletter, all sorts of Zestology listeners and their other halves are getting involved in tidying, because you can't watch this Netflix series without then tidying up all your stuff. It's quite entertaining. It's not even the best TV show ever, but it just makes you want to tidy. It creates this uncontrollable urge to tidy up. So we've been talking about that on the newsletter and other stuff as well. It's not all tidying up, and you can head to TonyWrighton.com and find out more about that. Now, I don't think this weather in London today is necessarily blue zone, but it'll have to do. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.